Welcome, all my fellow Redskin brethren and sister. I am your man and resident Redskins fan, Lou. Thank you for joining me here on the Redskins Report Live. We're talking 2016, 2017 Washington Redskins regular season schedule. We're also going to talk pre-draft. We're 2 weeks away from the 2017 or 2016 NFL draft. We know about the big shakeup at the top of the draft. Does that affect the Redskins at all? We'll see. We'll talk about that. We will discuss. Also on the docket, Redskins, I won't say have been busy, but they've done some things in free agency very quietly. Okay, if you're not paying attention, could easily go under the radar. And because of those moves, we're here to discuss what the Redskins have done and what those moves mean for the roster and potentially what they mean for the draft. So before we get into any draft talk, and remember, if you're watching out there live and the people have spoken, the only reason we're doing this live feed is because I asked you earlier if you wanted to do it and you guys responded with a resounding yes. You wanted this live feed. So we're going to chop it up for the next 2 hours. I owe you 30 minutes. I got up here at 9:30. So we'll go till 11:30 or until the questions run out and we are completed, whichever one comes first. So let's start with the schedule. And remember, if you're out there watching live, let me reiterate, if you're out there watching live, you're on Twitter, you're on YouTube, you're on Facebook, you're on Google+, you're on the chat box here, on the live feed, wherever you are, when you address me, make sure you use the hashtag Louie Tee Live. That's it. You use that hashtag. I know you're talking to me, and we can go ahead and have that conversation back and forth. Now, let's look at this schedule because there's a lot to digest here with this schedule that the Redskins have. And again, every time that we win the division or we make the playoffs, we get this rough schedule the next season. And it seems like every time we win the division, because we either win the division or we don't make the playoffs. That's what it seems like. We rarely get in as a wild card. So this is an interesting schedule. The last time we made the playoffs, won the division, the very next year we had a first place schedule. Everything fell apart. We haven't made the playoffs in back-to-back seasons since 1991 and then 92, the very last years of Joe Jackson Gibbs 1.0. So this is a big challenge for us. We made the playoffs in 05 with Joe Gibbs 2.0. We missed the playoffs in 06. We made the playoffs with Joe Gibbs in 2007, 2.0, his final year in Washington for the second time. We did not make it back in 08. We know that was the Jim Zorn first season where we started out the season 6-1, ended up being 8-8 on the year. And so we won the division in 2012. We know what happened thereafter. So look, I don't want to go back down that road again. I'm hoping that this time this can be different. We got a quarterback that we believe in. We have a young nucleus of players that we're building around. We've got Scott McCloughan picking the groceries. I think we're in a much healthier spot than we were in 2012. So I feel good about the upcoming season, but it's a rough schedule. And I know a lot of people say when you start talking about schedules and first place schedules, it's only 2 games different from everyone else in the division. That's a big damn 2 games, okay? Just think about it this way, and this is the way I always address people who say that. Just think of it this way. If we would have had 2 tougher games on our schedule and lost those games last year, we wouldn't have won the division, okay? So just think of it in that regard, in that respect, that if we weren't 9-7 but 7-9, maybe we win the division via tiebreakers, maybe we don't, but the whole season plays out differently if we got 2 tougher games on our schedule and we lose both of those games instead of us winning all of the games that we did. So it benefited us last year to play the Rams. It benefited us last year to play the Buccaneers versus playing the Seattle Seahawks or playing the Arizona Cardinals or playing one of those teams in those divisions that were very, very good. And again, everyone played the NFC South last year, so no one got away from that wrath of the Panthers and what they were doing last season. But again, we didn't play the Packers, okay? We didn't play the Vikings. We didn't play the Lions. We played the Bears. First road win of the season came at Chicago. If we would have tried to go to Minnesota and win, if we would have tried to go to Green Bay and win, would we have done so? Probably not. So I don't want to hear the whole, it's only 2 games. It's 2 tougher games. Instead of playing St. Louis this year, we're playing Arizona in Arizona, okay? That's a tough game, okay? No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Instead of playing Tampa Bay this season, we're playing Carolina on a Monday night, okay? That's a tough game. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. They make a difference. That being said, let's jump into the schedule, man. And I'm going to say this right off the bat. I am not a fan of week 1, okay? And I don't know how some of you guys feel out there about week 1, but I'm telling you right now, I absolutely hate week 1. You know our track record on not just Monday night, but on primetime in itself speaks for itself, okay? We have been horrible on primetime television at home. Add to the fact that it's the Steelers, and we all remember, if you're a Redskins fan and you've been a Skins fan for at least the last decade, you remember good and well what the last time looked like when the Steelers came to FedEx Field in 2008. I will never forget that Monday night because it was the beginning of the end of a very promising season. They came in to FedEx Field against a 6-1, maybe 6-2 Washington Redskins team at the time. And they steamrolled us. They hurt J. Cam. We actually injured Ben Roethlisberger, and Byron Leftwich tore us a new one that night. They came into our stadium, took over, turned it into Heinz Field, and it was just demoralizing. Our season was never the same, and we went on to an 8-8 finish. Very disappointing when you start the season off 6-1. So it was just disappointing all the way around, and I'll never forget them coming in, taking over our stadium, embarrassing us on a Monday night. It sounded like a road game. They just absolutely came in, and that's what the Steelers do. Don't take it personal. They travel wherever they go. They could be playing a game in London. Their fans will show up, okay? They're that dedicated. They're that many of those guys. They travel wherever the Steelers go. So to play a home game against the Steelers, it's like you're not playing a home game. Add to the fact that it's week 1. Add to the fact that it's Monday Night Football. I don't like waiting until Monday in week 1 to play. Remember the last time we did that? We won the division in 2012. Remember what we did 2013? Monday Night Football, Philadelphia Eagles, first year of Chip Kelly, first game of Chip Kelly in the regular season, get our asses whooped by the Philadelphia Eagles on a Monday night. And we had to wait until Monday to get that ass whooping. I don't prefer to wait. Week 1, I'm so amped. I'm so juiced. I want to see my boys right away. I want to see them immediately. 1 o'clock, Sunday afternoon, I want to sit down on my couch and watch my boys. I don't want to watch everybody else play, watch Sunday Night Football, and then have to wait another 24 hours before I get to watch my boys on Monday night. And that's what they're making us do on Monday Night Football week 1 versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. So not really thrilled about that. But it is what it is. I'm not going to sit here and complain and cry over spilt milk. If we want to be a good team, we got to beat good teams. That includes the Pittsburgh Steelers. So hopefully we can go get that one. I'm not feeling that game week 1. But you know what I am feeling? Week 2, okay? First 2 weeks of the season, we start at FedEx Field. 2 tough opponents. We're going to have the Cowboys coming to dinner in week 2. That should be a lot of fun, man. I'm loving that because remember, last year we had to wait until late in the season to get some of the Dallas Cowboys. Matter of fact, both of our contests versus the Cowboys came week 12 or later last season. So I think we played them in week 13, and then we played them again week 17 last season. So it's good to get a Cowboys game early in the season, gets us lathered up, gets us going early in the division at home. Got to try to get off on a good note and on the right foot in the division. That's the way to do it against the dirty Dallas Cowboys in week 2 at home. Go to week 3. Giants on the road. You know I hate going to New York. It's probably the one place in the league that scares me the most. I tell you this all the time. I have nightmares about the Giants in New York. Nothing has changed. We went to New York last year. We got destroyed. It was a debacle. And it maybe was one of the worst showings we had. It was on Thursday Night Football for everybody to see. It was very pedestrian in terms of the performance we put forth in that game. It started bad, too. I mean, we got off to a really bad start. Remember, that was the whole block punt early in the game. Giants get an interception off of Kirk Cousins early in the ball game, and we never really had a chance. It might have been Kirk Cousins' worst game of the season. You know, you could sprinkle in the Jets game if you like, but he had no weapons in that game. Remember, there was no D-Jax. There was no Jay Reed. We were all kinds of banged up in that game, but that Giants game, there were no excuses. Everybody was healthy besides D-Jax, but we knew that going into the game. We just didn't play well in that game. It was a collective team effort in that game where we failed. And so I'm not looking forward to going into New York in week 3, but I'd much rather go to New York early in the season than have to need it late in the season and have to go to New York. So if I'm going to take an L in New York, let me take it early in the season when I can still overcome it, versus late in the season when I need to have it, and it's just not a good look for us. So week 3, we know what it was for us last year, exact same spot last year. We embarrassed ourselves. This time it's not on primetime television. It's not a Thursday night game, but it is Giants week 3 in the Meadowlands at New York. So not really looking forward to that game, but it is what it is. Week 4, we know what that is. It's the Cleveland Browns. Will Robert Griffin III be the starter by that point in the season? We'll see. But if he is, we'll welcome him back home, hopefully with a nice L. If he's not starting, then this game doesn't have any luster. Doesn't mean anything to us. If he is starting, then this game is going to be built up as a revenge game. And this game will have so much hoopla and so much drama surrounding it. The storyline, we all know what it will be if Robert Griffin III is, in fact, the starter. So we'll see what happens there. I just want to win. I don't really give a damn whether he's starting, he's not starting, whether he plays or he doesn't. I just want to win. It's the Browns. They're not a good football team. Looking at them, looking at their roster as of right now, I just want to beat them. I want to get the W, and I want to move on to the next game. That's how I feel about that. Week 5 at Baltimore. So that'll be a nice little showdown with the Ravens, our neighbors upstate. So that should be fun. I look forward to that game, playing the Ravens. And so we'll see what happens there on the road at Baltimore in week 5. Week 6, so peak game, first quarter of the season, our first quarter of the season, so the first month, we split the season into quarters. First quarter of the month, we have 3 out of 4 home games, okay? So the first 3 out of 4 games of the season are at home, with the lone road game being against the New York Giants. So you go to the second quarter of the season, and you start with the Ravens on the road. Then you have Philadelphia at home in week 6. And this is a similar spot to where we had the Eagles last season. If you recall, that was the first comeback of the season, the first of many comebacks by Kirk Cousins in the 2015 season, where we were down late. We should have won that game going away. We dominated the Eagles early in that ball game. They were sleepwalking for about 2.5 quarters. They woke up with a deep ball, and that got things jump-started for them. They end up taking the lead late in that ball game, and we had to battle back. Kirk takes us on a long game-winning drive at the end. Pierre Garçon caps it off with a tough catch in the end zone, and that was the beginning of Kirk Cousins and Captain Kirk leading us to an NFC East championship. So that's a big game for us. Again, our third game in the division, second at home. So 2 early division games at the crib. Got to take care of business at home in the division if we're going to win. We won the division last year because we won games at home. Specifically, we won games in the division at home, beat the Giants at home, beat the Eagles at home, went on the road, beat the Eagles, went on the road, beat Dallas for a 4-2 mark. Only 2 blemishes were on the road at New York and at home versus Dallas. So if we're looking to repeat as NFC East champions, it is paramount that we win at home like we did last season, especially when it comes to divisional opponents. So got the Eagles week 6 at home. That's the only home game in the second quarter of the season. Weeks 5 through 8, that's the only home game. So we have to take advantage of that one game versus the Eagles in week 6 and try to get it. Week 7, at Detroit, at Detroit. I'm not afraid of the Lions. Neither are you. They're coming off of a rough season. No heavens to Megatron. New general manager, new direction. We'll see how the Lions fare in this season, but we have to go to Ford Field and take on the Lions. We'll see what they look like when we get there. Week 8, That's one of the anomalies of the schedule. We go to London to take on the AFC North champion Cincinnati Bengals. That's going to be a tough game, whether it's in the jungle or in London, as it's going to be. Doesn't matter. They're a good football team. That's going to be a tough one. So we're going to have to strap it up. And the good thing about that is we know we got a bye week coming after that. So we should leave it all out on the field, let it all hang out, and see if we can't go. And again, when you win the division, and everybody in the division has to play Cincinnati. Everybody's got to play Pittsburgh. Everybody's got to play Baltimore. Everybody's got to play Cleveland. So everyone plays the AFC North. But this is a big boy game right here. You got to strap them up and see if we can't beat one of the better teams in the league in London. So that's one I'm looking forward to against Cincinnati. If we want to prove that we belong this season, we got to beat the good teams in the league. We can't just beat the bottom feeders, because guess what? There aren't a bunch of bottom feeders on the schedule this year. We play tough divisions, AFC North, NFC North. There aren't any slouches on the schedule this year. We want this division. We're going to have to take this division by going out and winning football games against good, tough opponents. Week 9 bye. Love it. Splits the season directly in half. You can't get a better bye, if you ask me, than week 9. 8 games prior, 8 games after. Doesn't get much better than that for me, so I love our bye. This is where the season gets tricky. If we don't go into the bye week with a solid record, okay, this is where the season could fall apart at the seams. It gets really tough after the bye week, okay? I'm going to run down these games quickly, then we'll come back and analyze them one by one, okay? Week 10, home for Minnesota. Week 11, home for Green Bay. That's a primetime game, okay? Week 12, Dallas, Thanksgiving, primetime game. And we'll talk about the quirk in the schedule there that's not favorable for our boys. Week 13, the very next week, at Arizona, 3 straight road games, okay? At Dallas, at Arizona in week 13, at Philadelphia week 14, okay? That is tough sledding. 3 consecutive road games. We got to be road warriors at that point in the season. Home for Carolina on a Monday night. Our final televised game, our final primetime game of the season is home against Carolina on a Monday night. Saturday in week 16, we're at Chicago like we were last year late in the season, at the Bears, week 16. Finish up the season week 17, home for the Giants. But let's focus in on weeks 10 through 15, because it doesn't get much tougher than this around the league. Listen to this. Minnesota, home. Green Bay, home. That's a primetime game on a Sunday night. At Dallas, Thanksgiving. That's a Thursday. So you go from a Sunday night game to a Thursday game. We'll talk about that a little bit later. At Arizona the very next week in week number 13. At Philadelphia the following week in week 14. And then home for Carolina. That is a tough 5-game stretch if I've ever seen one. Minnesota won the division last year. Green Bay put us out the playoffs last year. Dallas, Thanksgiving. You know what that means. Arizona won their division last year, went to the NFC Championship game. Philadelphia, tough on the road in the division. Carolina went to the Super Bowl, won their division last year. Does it get any tougher than that? I don't know if it can. Okay, let's talk about these games one by one. Minnesota. We owe Minnesota. For the last 2 years, and take last year out of the equation, we didn't play them last year. For the last 2 years prior to last season, the Minnesota Vikings crushed any hopes of making the playoffs. They did it in 2013 when we were teetering on the fence of, could we make another run? Remember, we were fresh off of that 2012 7-game winning streak, going to the playoffs. We won a game, okay? Remember, we had that thrilling win versus San Diego on homecoming game. We wore the throwback jerseys. We went to overtime. We should not have won that game. Game should have never went to overtime. We make a goal line stand, force the Chargers to kick a field goal late in regulation to give us a chance to win. We win on a Darrell Young fullback dive in overtime. And it's a thrilling win. We're excited. It gets us to like 3-5 on the season. And we think we still have a shot. We go to Minnesota on a Thursday night. We play a good game. I thought we played good enough to win. We didn't do enough defensively. Remember, their quarterback at the time, Christian Ponder, goes down. Matt Castle comes in, blesses us on the road. We lose to the Vikings. Drop to 3-6. We don't win another game the rest of that season. The next year, 2014. I thought we were starting to come together. We go to Minnesota. Robert Griffin III actually didn't play a bad game. Might have played his best game of the season, as a matter of fact, in that game. Those are touchdown pass to Deshaun Jackson. We have a shot to win. We're not able to get it done late in the ball game. We lose to a rookie quarterback in Teddy Bridgewater in the Minnesota Vikings, and our season goes to hell in a handbasket. So we owe the Minnesota Vikings. They're a good football team. I think we can take them, but it's going to be tough. They got Adrian Peterson, and we know what that means. So we'll see what happens there. The next week, Green Bay Packers, home. We owe those boys, okay? Put us out in the playoffs last year in our own building, and that's a Sunday nighter. So I'm juiced. I'm amped for that. Again, this is another one of these situations. Minnesota's a good team. Won their division last year. Green Bay, another playoff participant from a season ago. You wanna prove you belong. You need to win games like these at home. These are home games. I love our home games this year because the toughest opponents that we play them at the crib for the most part. Okay, so this is another tough team, but it's at home. We got to find a way to get it done. We owe those boys too. This is where the schedule gets a little dicey and it's very taxing on our players. That's a Sunday night game in week number 11 versus Green Bay. Okay, we turn around the very next week and we play Dallas on Thanksgiving Day, 4:30, second game, but it's on a Thursday. Remember, you play Sunday night, quick turnaround, Thursday game against the Cowboys. That's tough. Okay, it's tough to go Sunday night, let alone Sunday to Thursday. We're playing Sunday night. Okay, that makes it that much tougher that the game is on Sunday Night Football, and then we got to turn around and play on Thanksgiving versus the Cowboys. So they did not do us any favors there. That's a quick turnaround for a team playing on primetime television just 4 nights prior. Then you look at the next week's game at Arizona. We'll have 10 days before that game against the Cardinals, but I don't know if that's going to help us because we got to go into that Red Sea, into the Reds' nest, and take on an Arizona Cardinals team that is among the best in the league. We know how dangerous they are, and I say this every year. Teams go into the desert, but they do not come out alive. That's a scary game right there. I don't have a lot of confidence in us going in there and winning unless some things transpire throughout the course of the season that gives me more confidence. That's a tough one. If they're healthy, that's a damn good football team. At home, I don't know if we'll be able to go into Arizona and win that game. Then the following week, third consecutive game on the road at Philadelphia. That's the one team in the division when we go to their place, I don't care. We can beat Philadelphia in Philadelphia. That's the one, even when we stink, that's the one place where I'm like, if we got to go on the road in the division, I still feel confident. We could be a 2-10 ball club and we're going to Philadelphia. I still think we can win. That's the one place in the division it still feels like home when we go there. So not worried about that one, but that's 3 straight road games. Road games wear on you after a while, and that's a toughie. You go to week 15, another revenge game, okay? The Panthers, they did us dirty last year, okay? I mean, they really did us dirty. I mean, they took their underwear off, put it on our face, all right? Made us smell their funky draws. They really did us dirty last year. So that's one of those games at the crib, Monday Night Football. Everybody's watching, defending NFC conference champion. I want them. I want them bad. I told you. You watched my revenge video I did last year, and I told you, I don't want the Panthers in the playoffs. We weren't ready for them last year, but I think we could be ready for them this year. And I said, they'll get theirs eventually. I didn't want them last year. We weren't ready, and I knew we weren't ready, okay? They would have stomped another mud hole in us last year had we had to play them in the playoffs. I told you they'll get theirs eventually. This is the time. Monday Night Football, at home, everybody's watching. It's time to do those boys in week 15. Hopefully, we're playing for something in week 15, and our season hasn't already went to hell in a handbasket, because if it does, and we're 5-9 at that point in the season, or we're 5-8 at that point in the season with no playoff aspirations, that game could get ugly as well. Let's hope that we're playing good football and we're prepared to take on a tough team like the Carolina Panthers on a Monday night on primetime television in week number 15. December 6th, 24th is a Saturday, okay? Week 16, the league, and I talked about this on the schedule release video that I did, the league has made it so that most teams are playing on Saturday in week 16 because Christmas falls on a Sunday. They don't want all of their games on Christmas Day. So they've got about 2 or 3 games on Christmas Day, but the bulk of the week 16 schedule is going to be played on Saturday. We're one of those Saturday games. We're on the road at Chicago. That's a team we beat last year that helped us catapult ourselves to the playoffs. Remember, we had not won a road game until we beat Chicago late in the season. And I want to say it was week 14. We beat them. Then we came back home, beat Buffalo. And we went on the road, beat Philly in week 16. And we beat Dallas in week 17 on the road as well. So that was a big win for us last year. Hopefully we'll be able to go to Chicago at Soldier Field and get another big road victory late in the season. And week 17, home for the G-Men. Look, I like finishing up the season at home. I don't care who the opponent is, Dallas, Philly, Giants, makes me no difference. I just want to be home. And last year, luckily enough for us, we didn't need a game, but it didn't matter because we smacked Dallas in the mouth anyway in Dallas. So that was good. But I'm glad to get a home game to wrap up the season because, as you all know, usually with this division, it comes down to the last week of the season. And if it's coming down the stretch and you got to have it, no better place to be than defending the home turf. So Giants, week 17, we beat them at home last year. We can beat them again at home, if you ask me. So that's the schedule in a nutshell. I think it's a very good schedule. I think there are some tough spots. That week 10 through week 15 slate, that's as tough as it gets. And we're going to find out just how good we are as a football team when we go through that schedule and that portion of the schedule particularly, because you're talking about all playoff teams from last year with the exception of 2 division games. And you know, when you're talking division games, and both of them are on the road at Dallas, at Philadelphia, when you're talking division games, all bets are off. Doesn't matter how bad that team is or how good they are. It's going to be a tough game regardless because it's division. It's family. That's family business. You know how that goes. All right. If those teams say they ain't did it, then they ain't did it. But if they did, well, that's family business. You know how it goes. So it doesn't matter that it's Philadelphia, it's Dallas, and they weren't good last year. It's family business. And those boys know it's like they are first cousins. So you look at the schedule, weeks 10 through 15, all playoff teams, with the exception of 2 road divisional games. So that's tough football, man. Any way you slice it. So I think that the schedule, we can get off to a good start. We may not beat Pittsburgh in week 1. We may beat Pittsburgh in week 1. But either way, we should be able to take Dallas in week 2. And going to New York in week 3, who knows what will happen? Browns week 4. If we can't get off to at least a 2-2 start at the beginning of the season, then we're asking for trouble because we need to get off to at least a 2-2 start, just looking at the schedule as it's constructed. So I'll see if you guys had any comments about the schedule and see if you got any heat on Twitter. If not, then we're going to keep going and talk about, let's see. The sound is acting up. I haven't had sound issues in a while, so if I'm having sound technical difficulties, let me know because I will quickly start this live feed over and start it back up because I don't do sound issues anymore. That's a thing of the past. So if we're having audio technical difficulties, please let me know because I will get that straight ASAP. So I see some heat on Twitter. I'm about to check it out. Let's see. All right, so we got questions on Twitter. I'm going to jump on those in a second. And all right, so okay, it's clear now. Great. Sweet. So what we'll do is we got some Twitter action, so I'll jump on Twitter quickly and See what you guys are asking now. Protect Sports at Protect Sports 42 asks the following: Does the Redskins take the defensive tackle from Ole Miss with the 21st pick over Andrew Billings if they are both there? So let me ask you guys this: did you guys get to read the Bleacher Report article done by Jason Cole? He interviewed Scott McCloughan, our general manager, at the owners' meetings up in Boca Raton, Florida, about a month ago. Have you had a chance to read that? If you haven't, and I talked about this on the schedule release and the in the Draft Room Live series that I did last week, the debut of that was a tremendous article. If you haven't read it and you're a Redskins fan, shame on you, number one. And number two, you need to go and read that ASAP. Like, there's nothing to talk about. If you want insight into the mind of our general manager, Scott McCloughan, you need to read that article, because that's the most in-depth article I've seen on Scott McCloughan in terms of him being our general manager and his inner workings of his thought process when it comes to the draft. So if you haven't read that article, you need to go and read that article ASAP. So without that being said, in that article, he talked about not taking guys with red flags in the first round, because it is imperative that you get guys that can contribute and help right away and not be a distraction. And it's basically him saying, look, I need to be safe in the first round. You can't take guys that have red flags in the first round, because they're not safe. You know, if you fail with a guy in the first round, you don't want it to be because of character issues or off the field issues. You want it to be because he just wasn't good enough. And so I think that's what Scott McCloughan basically said in that article. Yeah, exactly. DMV Pride 10 says, yes, where he talks about red and blue players. Exactly. Blue players being Pro Bowl players, red players being really good football players, the kind that you fill your roster up with. And I talk about this all the time. I say that, look, you're not going to have a team full of Pro Bowlers and all pros. The majority of your team, the meat and potatoes of your football team, are going to be made up of really good football players. Role players is what I call them. Okay, he calls them Reds. They're good football players. They're not great football players. They're not Pro Bowlers. They're not all pros. They're just good, solid football players that do what they're asked to do. And so he said in the first round, he wants to draft a blue, but he must get a red. Okay, it is of the utmost importance that he get a red in the first round. So with that being said, he's not drafting Robert Nkemdiche in the first round. Based off of what I read in that article, based off of what he said, he's not drafting Nkemdiche. He's not drafting a guy that he feels like could be a character risk in the first round. He's not drafting Noah Spence in the first round. That's what that says to me. If those guys are around in, say, the second round, maybe, okay? But if you're talking about those guys in the first round, I don't see it happening, because Scott McCloughan basically spelled it out and said, hey, I'm not taking guys that could be potentially character risks in the first round, because I need more of a sure thing in the first round. I can't afford to miss in the first round. So, good looking out, DMV Pride. Glad you read that article. We got another one at Protect Sports 42. So another one from Protect. Do the Skins take Tyler Boyd in the second round to replace someone like Ryan Grant? I think that that's very possible. I've heard a lot about Michael Thomas, but he's not going to be around in the second round. Again, keep in mind that Scott McCloughan wants to trade back. And I really think if the draft goes and unfolds the way that I think it could, I think the Titans kind of messed some things up for us, because with the Titans at number one, I felt like there could be a chance, and it was still a long shot, but I felt like there could be a chance that no receiver comes off the board until 22, and that would be at the Houston Texans. I was hoping that no receiver would come off the board, so that at 21, our pick, that will become a hot spot for a team looking to get in front of the Texans, because they want a specific receiver and they didn't know which one the Texans were going to take. So just to be sure, they wanted our pick to get in front of the Texans to take the receiver that they coveted the most in the draft. And so with the Titans now being at 15, the likelihood of them taking a wide receiver is 50-50, because I think it's either a receiver at 15 for them or it's an offensive lineman. Either way, I feel like they kind of took the ball out of our hands because I felt really good about no receiver coming off the board until, you know, the 22nd pick in the draft with the Houston Texans, which could have meant that the 21st pick becomes a hot spot for someone looking to trade up to get in front of the Texans, to take Corey Coleman, to take a Laquan Treadwell, to take whomever, because no receiver had been taken in the draft yet. So I feel like that trade might have messed a little something up for us, but we'll see what happens. But in terms of Tyler Boyd, to circle back around and answer your question, I was talking to somebody about Ryan Grant the other day, and I said, I don't know if he makes the roster this year. We know they're going to part ways with Andre Roberts. He's going to, and I told you this way back when, the last time we did a live feed, that he's going to be a June 1 casualty. They're going to cut him, saving them more money after June 1 than before. So after June 1st, I expect him to be gone. And I think that's part of the reason why they were out there sniffing around Anquan Bolden. And I think someone's asking a question about Bolden, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But Tyler Boyd, for me, is interesting because I like him. He reminds me a lot of Keenan Allen out in San Diego, a guy that is not very fast, and because of that, people knock him down a few rungs. But if you're talking about a smooth, polished wide receiver that can run great routes, that can catch the football with his hands very well, you're talking about Tyler Boyd. And I think he would make a great Washington Redskins wide receiver. And he's someone that I could see us targeting in the second round. Again, how the board looks, what players are available will determine what the Redskins ultimately do. Do we trade back? Have we acquired more picks? That will definitely change the outlook of our draft and who we select in the second round. Protect Sports 42, at Protect Sports 42. He's reeling them off, folks. Ask the following. Would you sign Anquan Bolden if you're the Skins? I would sign him after the draft. I wouldn't want to sign him pre-draft because I want to see what I do in the draft, and I don't want to make it a situation where you may have to ultimately cut Anquan Bolden or have to cut a receiver that you may like because you don't want to get rid of Anquan Bolden. If you go out in the draft and you acquire, let's say the Redskins draft 2 receivers in the draft and both of them are looking to make the roster, and you sign Anquan Bolden pre-draft, because again, it might be best player available. We look up and a guy that has no business being there as a receiver is there, and you say to yourself, Pierre Garçon's contract next year may be too much for the Skins' liking. Deshaun Jackson's on the last year of his deal. You take 2 receivers to fill the void that will be left by those guys vacating potentially next season, and all of a sudden you got 2 receivers that you draft that are looking to make the roster this year, in addition to Ryan Grant and Jamison Crowder. You're talking 6 receivers. We're not keeping 6 receivers, I don't think. So not when you're going to probably have to keep 4 tight ends because we no longer have a fullback. So in my mind, I'm thinking you sign Anquan Bolden, sure, after the draft if you don't do damage in the draft at wide receiver. At Protect Sports 42, once again, what are the 5 toughest games for the Skins on face value? Look, I just went over the schedule, and I can tell you right off, Buck, that if you're talking about a stretch of games, that 5-game stretch, weeks 10 through 15, doesn't get much tougher than that. But if you're talking specific individual games, that Steelers game week 1 to me is tough, even though it's at home. Steelers come in, they take over your stadium. That's tough. And I'm going to rank them too when I'm done. I'm going to rank the 5 toughest games. I'm going to take it a step further. At Arizona, tough game. Cincinnati, in London, tough game. Carolina, home, Monday Night Football, tough game. And Green Bay, home, tough game. So rating the 5 toughest games, I'm going to rate them in numerical order from least toughest of the 5 to the most tough game we have on the schedule. The 5th toughest game we have on the schedule is the Cincinnati Bengals over in London, because it's not a true road game. They're a good football team, but it's not a true road game for us. So that's a tough game because they're a good football team, but it's in London. So it's not, if that was in the jungle, that would be much higher on the list, but it's in London. So I like our chances there, but that's still a tough game. That's the 5th toughest game on the schedule. The fourth toughest game on the schedule for me is home for Green Bay. That's a team that I thought we should have beaten the playoffs last year. We got a good up close and personal look at them. They will not be the same team that we saw last year because they'll have Jordy Nelson back. So they'll be a totally different team, much more explosive, different dynamic, but they're still the Green Bay Packers. They still have Aaron Rodgers. It's still going to be a tough game for us to try and get. That's the fourth toughest game on the schedule, if you ask me. Third toughest game on the schedule is going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers week 1 at home. They come in, they take over your stadium. They're a tough team. They're a good football team. They're the upper echelon of the NFL, and we're going to have to try to take them out week 1 at home with all of their fans infiltrating our stadium. That's going to be a tough game. Third toughest game, if you ask me. Second toughest game on the slate, Carolina Panthers at home, Monday Night Football, defending NFC conference champions. What more do I need to say? Cam Newton and company, those guys are really good. They beat the hell out of us last year. It wasn't even funny what they did to us. So I'm looking forward to that game, but that's going to be a tough one at home versus the Panthers. And by far the toughest game on the schedule, it's not even close to me, is Arizona on the road in week number 13. You got to be kidding me. Asking us to go on the road to the desert and take Arizona down if they're healthy, that is a tough task and a tough ask of a Redskins team that's trying to find themselves and trying to solidify themselves as a real player in not just the NFC East, not just the NFC conference, but in the league as a whole. Going into Arizona, it's not safe for anybody to go into Arizona and win. Ask the Green Bay Packers last year. They got a mud hole stomping them in Arizona. It's not safe. You go in there, and normally you don't come out alive in the desert. And so, to me, that's the toughest game on our schedule. Those are the 5 toughest games, and that's those games in numerical order in terms of the toughness of those games. Let's see. At SE_RGIO5, so at Sergio5, asks the following. Do you think Breland Allen can slow down Antonio Brown? Because he can't shut him out. He can't shut him down. Brown is a beast. He's going to give him a run, but look, Antonio Brown is just, to me, he's one of the best receivers, if not the best receiver in the league. No, Bashaud Breeland can't shut him down. Can he slow him down, which is what you basically said? Maybe. But remember, when we play the Giants, and to me, that's the best comp for Antonio Brown. When we play the Giants and we see, shame on you when you step toot, the old dirty backup. When we play OBJ and company, OBJ goes off on us. And Bashaud be right there, but he doesn't make the play. And that's how I feel like it's going to be against Antonio Brown. There are going to be some contested balls that Antonio Brown comes down with. Breland will be right there in his hip pocket, but won't make the play. And they'll still make plays on Breland in that football game. It'll be a fun matchup to watch because I think Bashaud Breeland is definitely, without a doubt, our best corner. And I think he's ascending in the league in terms of best corners in the league, but he's not there yet. And this fact that we're even calling it Breland Island, I'm not even comfortable with that right now because I don't think he's good enough to be calling himself Breland Island or anybody else for that matter to be calling him that. But he's a damn good corner. I love him, and I'm glad he's a Redskin. But Antonio Brown is a tough cover for any damn body in the league. That goes for Patrick Peterson. That goes for Joe Hayden. That goes for every corner in the league. He's a tough cover, so we'll see what happens. Sergio, again, at SE_RGIO5, at Sergio5, asks the following. Great season test for Kirk and the Skins. If we want to be competitive, we got to beat some of these teams. Yeah, absolutely. If we're going to be a good team, then we got to be able to beat some of these teams. And we got a lot of good matchups at home. Minnesota at home, Green Bay at home, Panthers at home. We got games against good teams at the crib. You can't ask for it much better than that. Steelers at home. Got to win some of those games. You're not going to win all of them, okay? But you got to win some of those games. And if we can do that, it'll go a long way towards us taking that next step as a team in this league. At SE_RGIO5, at Sergio5, asks the following. Do we take Treadwell at 21 if he's still available and then draft the D lineman in the second round, knowing the depth in this draft? I don't think that's what Scott McClellan wants to do, but I wouldn't put it past him. In his article on Bleacher Report, he said he already knows who he wants to take at 21 if he's still available. So I'm thinking it's a defensive lineman. I think he wants a defensive lineman. I think he wants to get some beef up front. We know that Scott McClellan is a trenches guy. He likes big players. So, and I think that goes for receiver too. He likes big receivers. I think he likes long corners. He likes big football players. He said that before. I like them big. I like them strong. I like them physical because those guys are built to last in a physical game like football. So if you ask me, Treadwell is definitely an option at 21, but it's hard for me to fathom receiver being the selection at 21 when we need so much help defensively. If the first 3 picks in the draft for us were all defense, I would give him a standing ovation because that's where the most help is needed. If he waited until the 4th round to address the offense, I wouldn't have a problem with it. Because at the end of the day, defense is the name of the game for us in this offseason. That's why most of the moves we've made in the offseason have been predicated towards fixing the defense, getting depth on the defense, because that's where we need the most help, is on the defensive side of football. Our offense, ready to go. If guys are healthy, our offense is one of the most dangerous in the league. Defensively, we are not up to par, and that's what's going to hold us back if we don't address those areas in the right way. And I'm hoping that Scott McClellan is going out and making some shrewd moves in the draft, whether it be trading back or making some great picks like he always does, and getting us some football players that can come in and help this defense in the first year of their careers as rookies. We need impact football players, and especially in the first round. I don't know if we can afford to spend a first-round pick on an offensive player when we've already got enough offensive talent. When we can win right now. This team is built to win right now. I'm not saying win a Super Bowl, but we're trying to get back to the playoffs and go further than the wild card game. We want to get into the second weekend of the postseason. We want to try to get to the championship game. In order to take those steps, we need impact players right now, especially when you're talking in the first round. So Treadwell is definitely on the table, but I honestly don't see that coming. Okay. We got some Twitter action, and we got some YouTube action. All right. Going to YouTube quickly. DMV Pride 10 says, did you predict our record yet, or will you wait until after the draft? I actually like to wait on a record until I see all the guys that have been selected. I see how everything goes down in camp, because so many things transpire between now and the preseason. I like to wait until, usually I make predictions in August, because I've gotten to see the teams in the preseason. I've gotten to see how injuries will impact teams. Again, who thought that the Green Bay Packers would not win the NFC North? But the minute Jordy Nelson went down, that changed the entire dynamic of that football team and that offense. So injuries play a huge part into predicting a record, and I like to wait until I see what the final damage will be and how many of your horses do you get to the starting line with before the season starts. And if you can get there with all of your stuff, that's a great sign for a team. I'm hoping we're one of those teams that can get to the starting line with all of our horses intact, ready to run. And DMV Pride 10 asked another question. He says, we still need a number 1 corner. Breland is good, but he is not a number 1 yet. We need another corner. I'm not doubting that. And we just went out and got one in free agency, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the program. But I don't think that Breland can't be a number 1 corner. And I'm not even going to go as far as to say he's not there yet. I think there's some things he does need to work on. But if you're asking me, is he ready to take the challenge on of being a number 1 corner? I think he is. I think he's ready to go, and I think he's ready for that challenge. I don't think he's, Breland Island and all of that nonsense. I don't subscribe to that. I don't think he has earned that moniker yet, because when he goes up against the top level wide receivers, he still has issues. But I think in order for him to get better, he needs to start seeing those guys on a week in, week out basis. He doesn't need to be yoked in and out of the lineup in terms of the number one corner. I want to see him taking on the other team's best wide receiver. And I want to see him stepping up to that challenge week in, week out, and seeing how much better he has gotten, because that's the only way you're going to get good in this league. You know, iron sharpens iron, metal sharpens iron. So if he's able to go up against Des Bryant one week and then turn around and have to guard Jordy Nelson the next week, and then turn around and have to guard Larry Fitzgerald the next week after that, it's going to make him a better football player, okay? And that's what I want for Bashaud Breeland. So for me, vitamin B will only be as good as we allow him to be, and I think we just need to throw him in the fire and say, all right, young fella, you're our best corner. You're the best we've got. Go out there and show why you're the best corner that we have, because eventually, guess what? That contract's going to be up, and we don't have to pay that young man. And we need to know what we have before we throw big bucks at vitamin B. So I'm looking forward to him stepping up to the challenge this year of being the Washington Redskins' #1 corner. All right, back to Twitter, as I like to say, at SE_RGIO5, or I already read that one. So we're going on to, what's up, BFG, man? At Burgundy Fly Guy asks the following. GM has said he wants to trade down a couple of times in his draft. Thoughts on walking away in this draft with 10 or 12 picks? I love the idea of getting more picks. And Scott McCloughan has always said that he's a quantity guy. He's a quality guy as well, but he's a quantity guy. He wants to throw the darts at the board as many times as he can possibly throw it, because he thinks in his mind, the more times I get a chance to throw the darts, the more opportunities I have to get one to stick in the middle. So he's huge on getting as many draft picks as possible. So to me, he's looking to trade back. He did it last year with Seattle, trading back, getting a bunch of picks, and getting the total. I think we started in the draft with 7 last year, ended up with 9 or 10. He wants to do that again, and he makes no bones about it, minces no words. He wants to have as many draft picks as possible, and we've seen that just in 1 year of Scott McCloughan heading up our draft. So we know that's exactly the route that he wants to go, BFG. At JR_Salvi says, what do you think of Vernon Butler? He seems like the type of player Scott was talking about drafting. He could be, because you look at his size and his frame, 6'5", 325 pounds or so. You're talking about a big athletic man with long limbs. It's the type of player that Scott McCloughan likes. And I think that in the back of my mind, I don't want to admit this, but I think that's who he's talking about drafting at 21 is Butler. I don't want him to draft Butler because I see some holes in his game. And honestly speaking, I think Butler has the potential to be a guy that is a havoc wreaker in the NFL. And I think he could be a really good nose for someone and actually be a penetrating nose that gets in the backfield, makes some plays. He missed a lot of tackles for me, and I didn't see it enough where I'm like, that guy definitely, because for me, what I'm looking for a pocket collapser. I'm looking for an immovable object in the middle of our defense. I'm looking for a guy that's huge, that's taking up space that you just can't move. And for me, Andrew Billings is that guy, because if Galette is what he was advertised as last year, which is an explosive, and I've seen Julian Galette. I know what he brings to the table. Okay, I saw him in New Orleans. But if he is what everybody said he was going to be, then my thing is, with him on one side, Kerrigan on the other side, I feel like the Redskins need a guy that's going to collapse the pocket and not allow quarterbacks to step up, because Kerrigan gets around the edge all the time, but the quarterback has room to step up because we're not collapsing the pocket. So because we got guys on the edge now on both sides that can get up the field, I feel like a guy like Andrew Billings will be able to collapse the pocket, force quarterbacks into pressure on the edges that they can't escape. Whereas I don't know if Butler is going to do that or not. And that's why I want Andrew Billings more so than I do Vernon Butler. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. And if he's the pick, in the back of my mind, like I said, I don't want to admit that he's the pick, but I think that's who Scott McCloughan was referring to when he said, I know who I want to take in the first round. At SE_RGIO5 asked the following: who do we take if still available at 21? Jaron Reed, Jonathan Bullard, or Andrew Billings? The latter two are the two that I would go with. I'm a huge Jonathan Bullard fan, and you know how I feel about Andrew Billings. I don't need to explain that to you anymore. But I look at Jonathan Bullard as a guy that I don't think he's a nose. I know he's not a nose. He's a 5-tech for us. If he were to be drafted by us on obvious passing situations on third downs, he would slide inside and be a nose probably, and play a little bit of defensive end. And in our base defense, 4-3 or 3-4, he would be a 5-tech. So I look at Andrew Billings, and you know how I feel about him and what role he would play for our team if he were drafted. Hold on 1 second, guys. Got somebody at the door. You gonna have your friend at the door and not go get the door? Okay, I'm not done. Love you too. All right. So that's how I feel about that. If we take Bullard, I would love it. If we took Andrew Billings, I would love that as well. At JR_Salvi says, who do you think is better, Eli Apple, William Jackson III? Would you be happy if we drafted either one? I wouldn't mind William Jackson III. Honestly, I wouldn't mind either one of them, to be honest with you. I don't think Eli Apple is a bad football player. I feel like he's missing something. When I look at Eli Apple, I say to myself, you got the measurables, you're a long, athletic, fast cornerback. Neither one of those guys really want to tackle. I'll say that first and foremost. Neither one of those dudes could tackle. Neither one of those dudes could care less about tackling. All right, so they don't separate themselves there. The difference for me is William Jackson III is a ball hawk. You give him an opportunity to make a play on the football, and that is what he's going to do. He has some deficiencies in his game as well, but you talk about a guy that can come up, play press, can play off in zone coverage. Eli Apple, to me, is more of a guy that wants to get in your face, play some bump, but he doesn't look for the football. That's why he didn't have as many, plays on the ball and interceptions as William Jackson III does, because William Jackson III is looking for the football, whereas Eli Apple isn't. He's got his face directly looking at the receiver, and he doesn't look back to see when the football is being delivered, and that gets him in trouble with pass interference down the field or illegal contact. So I would prefer William Jackson III over Eli Apple. Both are long corners and fit the mold of what Scott McCloughan usually likes to select in the draft when you're considering corner. So both of them would fit, but I don't think we're going corner in the first round because of the move we just made. And while we're on the subject matter, let's talk about it. Redskins have done some things in free agency quietly. One of those things was signing cornerback Greg Toller about 3 days ago. Greg Toller is a guy that I've always had respect for, and this goes back to his days as an Arizona Cardinal when he first came into the league. his biggest issue has always been health. A really good physical corner, long guy, come up in your face, press you, will tackle. Always been a very, very good corner in this league. Thought he had some exceptional years in Indianapolis. Last year wasn't one of his better years, but again, got to stay healthy. That's something he hasn't been able to do throughout his career. Redskins signed him to a one-year deal. I think he provides some excellent depth for us along that secondary. So I really like that signing. And because of that signing, I think that takes us out of the market of a first-round corner. Does it take us out of the cornerback market altogether? Because I think we're still going to take a corner at some point in this draft, probably second round if you ask me. But I think it takes us out of the cornerback market in the first round. Secure a guy that you really like right now so that it allows you some flexibility in the draft. You don't feel like you need to pull the trigger on a guy because you already got depth there at that position. So I think that's what that signing of Greg Toller did for us, was allows us some flexibility in the draft that if there's nothing there that we really like and you got to pick between corner or defensive lineman, you're able to go defensive lineman, or you're able to go even receiver, or you're even able to go safety versus having to go corner. All right, so that's that on Twitter. I do have some questions on YouTube, so I'll jump on those, see what we got. Yes, you are in enemy territory, Reed. You absolutely are. Okay, so all of those comments have basically been read already. So let's talk about free agency and what the Redskins have done. The Redskins signed, I just talked about Greg Toller at the cornerback position, and he's from the DMV area, so he's coming home. He's excited to come home. I'm hoping he plays some great football because I think there's some good football left in Greg Toller. I actually was really pleased when they said he was coming for a visit. I was like, please sign Greg Toller. I really like Greg Toller, and I think he'll provide us with some really good depth at the cornerback position if he can just stay healthy. We also signed Kendall Reyes from the San Diego Chargers, another one-year deal, and that's what we seem to be giving out this year. So a boatload of one-year deals. He's the defensive lineman that's going to provide depth. Remember, no more Jason Hatcher, no more Terrence Knighting. So there's room on the roster for a guy like Kendall Reyes to come in and get some playing time and get some snaps. So he's a guy that first couple of years in the league in San Diego, he was very good. Got pressure on the quarterback. He looked like he was going to be a gem for the Chargers. Last 2 years, haven't been able to duplicate what he did in the first 2 years. Hasn't been able to get to the quarterback. Hasn't been a factor in the run game. Has really been a non-factor. The only thing he can lay claim to the last 2 years in San Diego is being very durable and not missing a lot of snaps. So he's looking to resurrect his career. He's still a young man. I think he's like 27 years old or so. So he's basically on a one-year deal playing for a big money contract. So normally in a situation like this, you're looking to get the most out of a guy who's highly motivated because he's playing for security. He's playing for the ability to parlay a really good season this year into a big multi-year, multi-million-dollar deal next year. So you're hoping that Kendall Reyes comes to Washington motivated by the allure of a big contract if he plays well and gives us some quality football in this upcoming season. Also, we signed David Bruton Jr. from the Denver Broncos, a guy that is a tremendous special teamer. We also signed Garvin from the Steelers, a linebacker that a lot of people didn't say anything about, but it's one of those under-the-radar signings that continues to build the core of your football team. Remember, we went out last year and got the safety from Seattle, in hopes that not only would he start, but he would be a tremendous special teamer for us. Well, it didn't really work out that way. He didn't come in here. He didn't fill the void of, starting safety. And not only did he not fill that void, he wasn't great on special teams, which he had been in Seattle. So Jerron Johnson, no longer on the roster. So you bring in a guy like David Bruton Jr., who not only is going to fill that void on special teams, but he's also going to get a chance at safety. Now, remember, we still got Duke Iheanacho, Nacho man, coming back off an injury, who I'm absolutely in love with. But again, another one of these guys who can't stay healthy. So if you can't stay healthy, if you're not on the field, you can't be productive, you can't help us. So he's got to stay healthy. But David Bruton Jr. coming off of an ACL injury of his own. So again, getting a guy who was injured last year, who didn't finish the season, but this is a guy that plays special teams well, that also could go out and give us some depth at safety and potentially start at safety if he plays well enough in the preseason. So those are really most of the signings that we've had this offseason. Small signings, no big money contracts, no lengthy deals. We got Junior Gillette back 2 years and very an incentive-laden deal to come back into Washington, or I think it was actually a 1-year deal, if I'm not mistaken. Either way, he's going to be back with us again, and he's going to go out and prove himself. And much like I just said with Kendall Reyes, you got a situation where Junior Gillette going to have a chance to prove himself and see if he can't go out and get a big money deal next season, whether it's from us or another team out there that sees the way that he performs in 2016, 2017. So free agency, quiet on our front, but some small, very shrewd and calculated moves by Scott McCloughan. We brought in some other guys. We may very well still sign Anquan Bolden. I don't see us signing him, but we signed Vernon Davis. And speaking of which, let's talk about Vernon Davis before I go back to Twitter and YouTube. Vernon Davis. We signed Vernon Davis. I don't want to forget about him, because at first I wasn't a huge fan of the signing of Vernon Davis, because I said, why do we need Vernon Davis? We got tight ends. We got a bunch of them. But after I sat down and recalibrated my thinking and my thought process, I said to myself, okay, so Niles Paul coming off of an injury. You don't really know what you're getting out of him coming back off that injury. Lumberjack, Logan Paulson, coming off of a toe injury. He's been 100% medically cleared. He's ready to go, but who's to say it doesn't happen again? And who's to say he even makes the team, okay? He wasn't a lot to make it last year before he got hurt. So you take those two things into consideration. We're no longer keeping a fullback. Darrell Young has been told he's not going to be brought back. So that was a tough, bitter pill for me to swallow, because he's a core guy, a locker room leader, and someone that I felt like was just instrumental in the success of this team, would do anything you asked him to do, played all 4 special teams, was a guy that when you put him in the game, he could be cold off the bench, hasn't played a snap offensively, and then on the 61st snap of the game, you call his number and he'd come in and deliver like he's been playing the entire game. He was that kind of leader and veteran that we needed on this football team. And when you get rid of too many of those guys at one time, it can affect your locker room. You take Hatcher out of the locker room. You take a guy like Terrence Knighting out of the locker room. You take a Darrell Young out of the locker room. You take a safety out of the locker room like Deshaun Golson, and those are all veteran voices that had clout in our locker room. Remember, it was Deshaun Golson who called that players-only meeting. How big of a meeting was that? I don't know. But remember, we started winning after that meeting. You say what you want. Player-only meetings don't work, whatever. But he was the one that stepped up and said, hey, we need to be accountable. We need to start making sure that we do our jobs on the field. That's what veterans do for your football team. He's no longer there. He may be back. The door is still open for him to return, but he's not on the team right now. So Vernon Davis comes in and he can provide a veteran voice in the locker room. You also look at him. He's still an athletic freak. Now, his hands have went to hell in the handbasket. And I don't think his hands were ever the best coming into the league. He's always, to me, been a body catcher, but his hands have gotten worse, and even his body catches have been futile attempts at catching a football. So last year he was horrible, dropped a lot of big balls to the point where Peyton Manning said, I'm not throwing him the ball anymore. that prompted head coach Gary Kubiak to sit Vernon Davis down. If you remember, he wasn't a part of that Super Bowl run because they basically deactivated him because Peyton Manning said, I can't work with this guy. He doesn't catch the football. Some key drops last year. I hope he comes to Washington and gets rid of all of that and just goes back to the Vernon Davis that was a playmaker in San Francisco. We'll see if we can get that out of him. It's a one-year deal either way, so we'll see if he's going to come in rejuvenated under Scott McCloughan, a guy that drafted him, and play some good football. So I'm excited about Vernon Davis now because I'm looking at these two tight end sets that we wanted to run last year but just didn't have enough able bodies to do it. And I'm excited about the prospects of putting Jordan Reed on the field on one side and Vernon Davis on the other side. And if Vernon Davis can actually catch the football, that could be a problem for opposing defenses. So I'm really excited about the Redskins and that two tight end set that could potentially be on display with Vernon Davis and Jordan Reed on the field, both at the same time. All right. Let's see if we got any action on Twitter. Yes, we do. Do you think we can find a weapon for Kirk in the later rounds, such as a number one receiver? This is from @SE_RGIO5 at Sergio5, essentially. Yeah, I think we could find a receiver, a number one receiver. Since when do we find number one receivers late in the draft? It's rare. It happens. Antonio Brown was not a first-round pick. Antonio Brown was not a second-round pick. Antonio Brown was not a third-round pick. So you can find guys in the later rounds to come in and be studs for you, but it's rare. Okay, you don't want to stake your claim on going out and trying to unearth gems in the fifth round and turn them into number one wide receivers, especially in a draft that's not deep at receiver like it had been in the past 2 years. 2014's draft, extremely deep, one of the deepest receiver classes we've seen in quite some time. Remember, that gave us Odell Beckham Jr., that gave us Sammy Watkins, that gave us Mike Evans, that gave us Calvin Benjamin. The list goes on and on about the guys that were productive from that draft class. Last year's draft at receiver, another deep draft, and a lot of those guys were injured last year and didn't really get to play. And so we're going to see that draft class come alive with Kevin White coming off the shelf. Remember, Amari Cooper was the best receiver out of that group last year. Devontae Parker played at the end of the season and gave us flashes of what he could become. So we're going to see a lot from that draft class, and they were deep last year. This isn't that this year. There are about 4 or 5 guys that are first round worthy, and all of them aren't going in the first round. And then you're going to see a little bit of a drop off in terms of, speed and all of those other things that separate number ones from number twos in the league. I still think there are a bunch of good receivers that you can get second, third, fourth round in this draft. Laurente Carew is a guy that I really like out of Rutgers. We talked about Boyd out of Pitt. There are a number of guys that I think can help you in this draft at receiver, but I don't know if they're necessarily number one wide receivers, and that's the difference. At JR_Salvi asks, have you had a chance to check out Kevin Beard? After his pro day, he might be a third rounder now. Redskins need him. He's a free safety. I actually didn't check him out, but I read up on him because someone asked me about him on the In the Draft Room live series on Tuesday. And I hadn't heard of him until my man Smoke asked me about him. And so that prompted me to go. And because I've been so busy this week, as you could imagine, the big trade, I did a number of videos on that. And then I ended up doing a live feed. And then I'm doing this live feed. And then, family life, work, all of that stuff. Being really busy. So I haven't had a chance to sit down and watch tape on him. But just reading about this guy and his production at Middle Tennessee State, I'm intrigued. And I can't wait to plug in some tapes and some games and see what he brings to the table, because I've heard nothing but good things about this guy, which is shockingly surprising that I haven't heard about him up until this point, because normally when I read the type of things that I've read about this guy, I should know him already. His name should have already resonated with me, but surprisingly it hasn't until now. So I'm going to check him out, but I did go out, kind of do a scouting report on him of sorts, Now I'm going to see if what everyone else is saying matches up with what I see on tape. Probably do a little bit of a note-taking session on him. And then I'll be able to report to you what I find. I'll probably be able to have that for you guys on the Tuesday edition of In the Draft Room Live. So if you guys want to check back in with me on Tuesday night at 9:30, I'll probably be able to tell you more about how I feel about Kevin Beard as a safety and what he brings to the table. Great question, by the way, though. All right. Okay, so that's it for Twitter. Let me see if we got anything else on YouTube. Do you think, and this is from DMV Pride 10, do you think our defense is ready to take on this schedule, even with a couple of rookies we add? It could be. I'm going to tell you the difference in between last year's defense and potentially this year's defense: pressure on the quarterback. If we can get pressure on the quarterback consistently, if Julian Gillette is as advertised, that could change our defense in ways you could not imagine. Because remember, the young fella started to come on at the end of the season. Preston Smith, P. Boogie, started to get down. Get down, get down. He started to get down at the end of the season. P. Boogie started to get nasty. The only sack we had against Green Bay was for a safety that was by P. Boogie. Last 6 games of the season, this man had like 6 or 7 sacks to wrap up the season. Ended the season with 7.5 sacks, if I'm not mistaken. So he got nasty at the end of the year. He turned it up. So if that's any indication of what he's going to be moving forward, add him into what we already have with Kerrigan, and you're adding Julian Gillette, then you're probably going to see Chris Baker, who's going into a contract season, see him turn his game up. And I thought we got the best of Chris Baker last year. If he can step his game up some more, add in a defensive lineman that we're going to draft at some point in this draft, man, I'm telling you, the defense is going to be okay. I'm more concerned about the back half than I am in the front half. I think if we can get pressure, we can get by. Because let's not forget that we still got, what's the corner that we put in that was a receiver? Dunbar. Don't forget, we still got Dunbar out there that if he continues to grow, there's something there. We all saw it last year. If we can get Dunbar to continue to ball at corner, and he's going to have a whole year to do nothing but play corner. Remember, he didn't even come into the league as a corner. We moved him to corner. There could be something there. So we might have some stuff. Safety is a big question mark for us, but we might have some stuff. And remember, we're just going shopping on our IR. Just shopping off of our own IR, we're going to be better defensively. Because on IR, you get a guy like Dookie and Nacho back. And I don't like relying on guys who always are oft injured. But Dookie and Nacho back off of IR. Julian Gillette back off of IR. At some point in the season, I think we may get our cornerback, Chris Culliver, off of injury reserve at some point. We might get him back off PUP list if we put him on PUP list. So, look, just shop it off of our own IR. It's going to help our defense tremendously. So, I feel confident that we're going to fix some things defensively this year. So, let's see. Got another Twitter question. I'm going to hit that one after I go back to YouTube. Yes, Reed, the NFL draft is sneaking up on us. It's already the 16th. And it hit me, Reed, when Thursday I heard somebody say we're 2 weeks away from the NFL draft. And I said to myself, wow, we are 2 weeks away from the NFL draft. So, yeah, it'll be here before you know it, man. You're absolutely right about that. Is there a running back in the draft that Kirk can use as a playmaking pass catcher out of the backfield? Funny that you asked that, DMV Pride 10, because I talked about the running backs that tickle my fancy in this draft that I want us to select, because I heard people mention Alex Collins. I've heard people mention Derrick Henry if he if we trade back, would that be something that we would potentially want to do? And I'm saying, why would we want to draft a clone? Alex Collins is a clone of Matt Jones. Who? Matt Jones. He's a clone of me. They're the same back, if you ask me. To me, Derrick Henry, they're not the exact same, but they're damn close, okay? We don't need another one of those guys. We need a fast, pass-catching threat out of the backfield that's more of a third down back than he is a guy that you want to tote the rock on every single down. I think they're comfortable with Matt Jones if he can secure the football and stay healthy. They're comfortable with him being our every down back. We need to change the pace back. Chris Thompson is that, but Chris Thompson is like 185 pounds and he gets hurt all the time. They don't want to put him in there too often. I like Chris Thompson. He's going to be on this roster, and I thought that he did some big things for us last year, and I look forward to him being a fixture in our offense moving forward. But I'm looking for a guy in this draft, and there were two names that I threw out there. One is a guy that has a little bit of off-the-field baggage, and he's a guy that is often hurt. So I don't know if that's a road that we want to go down, but that guy is Kenyon Drake from Alabama. Okay, he does so many things at Alabama. He was a kickoff returner. We saw him return a kickoff against Clemson in the national championship game for a touchdown. He's a guy that you can throw the football to as a receiver. They split him out at Alabama all the time. He caught passes. He can run routes. Really good hands, soft hands, started at the combine as well. And he's a blazer. Guy's a fast running back. So he's a taller guy. He can catch the football. I don't think he's as natural a runner as some of the other backs in the draft, but I don't worry about that because I want this guy to be a threat, not only running the football, but catching it. And he adds other dimensions to your football team because, again, he can serve more than one role, also being a return man. The other guy who I really, really want is C.J. Prosise out of Notre Dame. Longer back at 6 feet, 220 pounds, so he's got the NFL build of a running back. 4.45 type runner, 4.47 in terms of 40, so he's fast. And he was an ex-receiver at Notre Dame, so he's raw still as a running back, which is perfectly fine by me because he looks natural as a running back, despite being raw, despite having to learn the nuances of the running back position. No, is he going to be able to step in and be a pass pro guy for you day one? Absolutely not. But what he can do day one is step in, win one-on-one matchups against linebackers, break guys off, win on stick routes and option routes out of the backfield. You can split them out as a receiver and have empty sets like we did with Kirk last year because he can win because he used to be a receiver, so he runs good routes, catches the football very cleanly. He's a fluid pass catcher. I love what he brings to the table. He's a dynamic football player, and I'd love to see the Redskins take him. So those are the backs that tickle my fancy in this draft, guys that can help Kirk Cousins in the passing game, much like Pierre Thomas did late in the season last year when we brought him on board. So we got 30 minutes left, guys. So if you got questions, continue to send them my way. See what we got on YouTube. Then we'll go back to Twitter. Kevin Beard is the truth. I would be stoked if the Redskins drafted him. I can't wait to watch this guy. I've been hearing so much about him over the last couple of days. I'm excited now. I hope the tape matches up with this excitement that you guys have for him because DMV Pride said that the other night that he was really high on him. Someone else, my man Smoke, said that this guy's really good and legit. And I heard someone else that I was talking to say, hey, man, you need to check this guy out. So when I hear it multiple times, I'm led to believe that everybody has to see something. So I can't wait to check that guy out. And yes, Reed, you're missing something if you don't see it with Vernon Hargreaves. The guy is legit, man. I don't know what you don't see with him, but he's legit, Reed. I mean, there are a couple of things that he's got to work on. Eye discipline can get him in trouble sometimes. Doesn't have great makeup speed, but in terms of pure cornerback, I don't think you're going to find better in this draft, to be honest with you. All right. At SE_RGIO5, aka at Sergio5, asks the following: who do you think is going to have a breakout season for us? It's a really good question, because last year I was adamant it was going to be Jordan Reed. I just knew it, and it happened. It came to fruition. It happened. This year, I don't really know if I have an answer to that, because logically, if you're talking offense, when you think of breakout season, you're thinking of an offensive guy. Naturally, you would lean towards Jamison Crowder. JC Eyes, yeah. You would lean towards Jamison Crowder because second-year guy had just set the Redskins rookie record for most catches in the season. So you're thinking naturally the next step is this guy's going to step up and become a huge threat for us. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. Part of the reason why he was able to catch as many balls as he did, Djax didn't play the first 6 weeks of the season. So let's say Djax is able to stay healthy. Let's say that the Redskins are able to run the football with more balance this year. Does he get more catches? I don't know. We'll see. I think he may get more touches. We'll see. But he's a candidate, obviously. But I'm hoping that we get some defensive breakout stars. That's the problem. We're not getting enough stars defensively. So, who I would love to see breakout this year? Vitamin B. How about he step up and assume the role of number one corner, relish in that role, and leave no doubts in anyone's mind that he is the best corner that we have, and he's a number one, because DMV Pride he just said on this very program, I don't know if he's a number one corner. I don't want that to be a doubt after this next season. So I'd love to see Vitamin B have a breakout season. I'd love to see Dunbar step up and continue his maturation and growth as a corner if he's given the opportunity to do so. I'd love to see Kerrigan go back to double-digit sacks and wreak havoc again as a pass rusher. Did he have double-digit sacks this past year? I don't think he did. I think he might have fell short. If he did, he barely got to 10 and a half sacks. I'd like to see him get back to what he was 2 years ago, which was the guy that was a 12 and a half sack guy that was wreaking havoc, that was outstanding for us. And then Junior Gillette, that's the wild card. If he's healthy, if he's explosive. Normally when guys have Achilles injuries, they usually don't come back that first year explosively. But remember, his happened so early in the season. Didn't even get into training camp good. I think it was like the first week of training camp when he went down, second week of training camp, something like that, where he could be explosive and he could be a guy that could be a difference maker for us. So be very interesting to see what he brings to the table. So offensively, I guess I'd go with Crowder. Defensively, I want it to be Vitamin B. So those are the guys that I'm hoping has breakout seasons for us. At SE_RGIO5, at Sergio5. Looking forward to week 4 and week 12. Week 4, Robert Griffin III returns. Will he be the starter? Remains to be seen. But the Browns come to FedEx Field in week 12, Thanksgiving at home, Thanksgiving at Dallas. You remember what we did to them the last time we played them on Thanksgiving. Robert Griffin III put on a show for the ages. So those are the 2 weeks that Sergio is looking forward to as a Redskins fan. All right, let's see if I got anything on Twitter. I do. Got 2 more on Twitter. Let's see if we got anything on YouTube. I don't. So, I don't. So, let's go back to Twitter. At JR_Salvi asks the following: are you as high on D'Angelo Hall at safety as Jay Gruden is? I'm not as high. Jay Gruden has been stumbling over himself, as with so much hope for D'Angelo Hall at safety. I'm anxious to see what he looks like, because if what we got out of D Hall last year at safety is an indication of what's to come, then yes, I would feel like Jay Gruden feels. But I'm not convinced yet, because what I want for D'Angelo Hall is for him to turn into a Charles Woodson type, a guy that makes that transition from corner to safety and starts making plays on the football. He didn't do that last year. He was a guy that came up and was physical, way more physical than any Redskin fan could have imagined. Nobody saw D'Angelo Hall coming up and laying the wood like he did at the end of the season. So that's promising in itself. But I want to see D'Angelo Hall make some plays on the football. I want to see this guy turn into a machine back there, reading the eyes of the quarterback and being like what he was when he was at the top of his game as a quarterback, a guy that could read the eyes of a quarterback, jump routes, make quarterbacks pay. That's what I'm looking for him to do. And I expect him to have some semblance of his old self back in terms of explosiveness, because now he's not having to deal with rehab this year. He's able to train and get that knee and that Achilles stronger this year because he's not coming off of a serious injury. So I'm looking for some explosiveness from him this year. We didn't get explosiveness from D'Angelo Hall last year. We just got a guy that was out there gutting it out and trying to feel his way back out on the football field. This year I'm expecting explosiveness. So we'll see what we get out of D'Angelo Hall. But I am high on him, just not as high as Jay Gruden is. Jay Gruden has been glowing about D'Angelo Hall moving to safety. Sergio at SE_RGIO5 says the following: can Matt Jones be our true number one back? Yeah, sure he can. I've always had confidence in Matt Jones. Who? Matt Jones! I've always had confidence in him. The thing is, you can't fumble the football, which he did last year, and you got to stay healthy. And that was the knock on him coming out of Florida, was he was often injured at Florida, dealt with some injuries there. I told you I was a little nervous when we drafted him because I never want to hear about tendonitis in a 22-year-old young man. You know what I mean? I don't want to hear about a guy missing games because he's got to have his knee drained. That's not a good look. So I was already a little nervous about his injury history. It proved to be a real concern because at the end of the year, he wasn't available because he was dealing with some injuries. So aside from the fumbling issues, you got to worry about his health. But I think if he dedicates himself, puts in the time, is able to secure the football better. There were times where he was real loose with the football. And I'm talking times where he didn't fumble. Well, I'm like, man, if there were a defender around, you would have fumbled the football because you got the football all the way out here, man. So he's got to work on ball security. That's a real issue for him. If he can take care of that and stay healthy, there were some games where I said, this young fella has it. New Orleans game, the screen pass that he catches and then turns it up and ends up with that huge, like 60-plus yard touchdown screen pass. The St. Louis Rams game, we all remember that. That's when he bursted onto the scene, like 123 yards on like 18 carries, including like a 29-yard touchdown scamper where he turned up the jets and ran down the sideline and outran the angle of a defender. We've seen flashes from him. You know, that Bears game, I thought that he ran tough in that game. Even though he tried to throw the football away, thought he was down like he was still in college, he was tremendous in that game. I thought he ran hard. And remember, Jay Gruden gave him the football at the end of the game. It was wet. It was a nasty day. Despite his fumbling issues throughout the season, Jay Gruden went to him with the game on the line when we needed to salt it away, and he delivered with punishing runs, including the final run of the game, which was a drag 2-3 defenders, run through 1 or 2 arm tackle, 9-yard run to solidify the game, get the first down, and allow us to take knees and beat the Chicago Bears on the road. So I think he can be a number one back without a doubt. Secure the football, stay healthy. Matt Jones, who? Matt Jones is going to be a number one back for us, and I think a damn good one when it's all said and done. See if we got any more action on Twitter. We do. And then we're going to hit YouTube up quickly and see if there's any action, any heat there. I doubt it because I didn't hear the phone go off. and there's not. So I'm going to answer this question, and if there's nothing else on Twitter, we'll wrap it up. At SE_RGIO5, at Sergio5, asks the following: would you like to see the Skins trade out of the first round to get more picks? It makes me not one bit of difference. Whether if we find a partner, this is the thing, and I say this all the time, what will dictate what I want us to do, what will dictate what we will do, is how the board looks. I'd love to know how Scott McCloughan feels about the guy that he wants or a trade being on the table. If the guy that he wants is a player that in his mind he feels like is a can't miss prospect, but there's still a trade over here on the table to be made, and there's an offer out there for him to move back and acquire picks, which one matters to him more? I think he'll take the picks over the one player. It's not like we're drafting in the top 5. It's not like we're drafting in the top 10. We're at 21. And so I think in his mind, he would much rather trade back. In my mind, if the player that I want us to take is there, I would much rather us take the player. And if we get an opportunity to trade back in the second round, so be it. But in the first round, I would love for us to get a good football player, as he calls it, a red in the first round for sure. I'd love to get a blue in the first round. But either way, I want a really good football player. And depending on how far you're trading back, how far are you asking me to go back? Are we going back to 25? Or are we just going back, are we going back to 25, which isn't that far at all? Or are we going all the way to the second round? And are the Tennessee Titans calling us up and saying, hey, we'll give you not only 33, but we'll package in one of those third-round picks that we got from the trade with the Rams. We'll give you a third-round pick as well. How do you say no to that? How do you say no if the Rams say, we'll give you our second, one of the seconds we got from the Rams, and we'll give you our third-round pick, which is one of the first third-round selections in the draft? How do you say no to two seconds? So which in effect would mean we would have 2 second-round picks and 2 third-round picks. How do you say no to that? I don't know if you can. And move back. And obviously, if we move out of the first round, we're going to get more than just a second and a third-round pick. They're going to have to throw in more than that. They're probably going to have to throw in a second round next year, or they're going to have to throw in, another third-round pick or another second-round pick in this year's draft. So, I mean, it all depends. What's the compensation? And more importantly, how far back are we going? At the end of the day, I really just want a good football player. But if the guys that I covet at 21 aren't available, yeah, I would want to trade back. But if the guys that I want are there, I would love for us to just stay there and take them, because at the end of the day, what's going to make our defense better is getting really good football players. The further back you trade, the less likely it is you're going to get a good football player, even though you don't know what you're going to get. What's the difference between 21 and 29 in the player you're getting? What's the difference between 21 and 35 in the player you're getting? Is there a big discrepancy between 21 and 35? Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? I can tell you this. There's a big difference in my mind between Jonathan Bullard and Jaron Reed. There's a huge difference between what those two guys bring to the table. So we'll see. So we got something on Google Plus. Let's see. From Jonathan Thomas. Love your work, brother. Not too bad for a Skins fan. It says 3 off-season moves you would do as a GM, plus 3 draft picks you must have if you were GM of the Skins. Okay? So let's see. If I were the GM, if I were Scott McCloughan, again, the board is going to dictate what you're able to do. But if I was Scott McCloughan, first thing I would try to do would be to solidify the beef up front on the defensive line. So got to be able to stop the run. I get nauseous just thinking about that final game of the season versus the Packers in the playoffs. When we needed a stop, the Packers ran it down our throats. I just threw up in my mouth a little bit. Hold on, give me a second. Let me wash it back down with some water. Left a bad taste in my mouth. Watching James Starks and Eddie Lacy run the football. They literally had an entire drive, about 75 yards. They just ran it down our throats down the field. Ran it into the end zone. Separated themselves from us again. To me, that was the backbreaker there. The minute we couldn't stop the run, and they were able to not only eat up clock, but eat up yardage and get in the end zone, it was demoralizing. It took me back to a place that I didn't want to be. It took me back to that Sunday night game versus the Cowboys where Marion Barber single-handedly destroyed us on the ground. And we sat there, and it seemed like what was an eternity, just watching him get 8 and 7 and 5 and 9 and 4 and 6 and 2 and 9 and 7. And it was just a constant grind, just watching him eat us alive, and there was nothing we could do about it. And I felt the same way, a helpless feeling that you feel when the other team is ramming a football down your throat, and there's not a damn thing you can do about it. And in order to stop that, to not see that happen again, I think you got to get beef up front. And whether it's a guy like Jonathan Bullard or it's Andrew Billings or, another defensive tackle like Butler, so be it. Just address the position and help us be better up front. So that's number one. Number two, I think at some point in this draft, you need to get a wide receiver. I've been asking for a big receiver for how many years is it now, guys? I mean, what are we on? Year 4 of begging for a big receiver? I was like, Leonard Hankerson doesn't count. He didn't play big. So I've been asking for a big receiver for like 5 years and running now. Man, it's been a long time. And we still haven't gotten that guy. And to be honest with you, if you don't draft it in the first round, you're probably not going to get him in this draft either, because the further back you move into the draft, the less likely it is you're going to be able to get, one of these guys that's huge. But that Moritz, a Boehringer guy out of Germany, very intriguing prospect. I want to see when he comes off the board, and I want to see where he goes, because 6'4", 220 pounds, 225 pounds, sub 4.5 40, really good hands. They don't grow on trees, folks. Those type of guys, they don't come a dime a dozen. So I'd love to see just how good he is, how raw he is. I know he's raw. But if you're willing to put in the time and effort to work with this guy, he's got a bunch of stuff you can't teach. And so would I love to see the Redskins take a flyer on this guy? Maybe. When do you have to take a flyer on this guy? I think the legend of Moritz Boehringer is growing as we speak. And the bigger that this legend gets, the higher this man is going to be pushed up some draft boards. So I don't know, but I want the Redskins to get a receiver at some point in this draft. Whether it's a big guy or not, at the end of the day, I just want them to get a good wide receiver, because you don't want to wait until Pierre and Deshaun are gone before you look up and say, all right, we got to address wide receiver. Start grooming guys now to take over that mantle when those guys are no longer there. You like what you have in Jamison Crowder. I think he's a slot guy. I don't necessarily think he's an outside receiver. And because of that, I want to see us attack that receiver position aggressively and go get somebody in this draft. So that would be move number 2. And then, of course, the elephant in the room, you got to attack the secondary. We need a corner and we need 2 safeties. I don't want one. I want 2 safeties in this draft. So, to me, those would be the 3 moves made if I were GM of the Washington Redskins. Beef up the D-line, get a receiver that you can train and groom into the next big thing as a Washington Redskins receiver, and get help for that secondary. Corner and a couple of safeties, minimum. So that was a good question. Let's see. Got another question on YouTube. DMV Pride says, Do you think Kirk improves his numbers or decreases due to the stiff competition? I don't necessarily know if competition is the reason his numbers will decrease this year. If they do, I think it'll be more because we have a chance to be balanced offensively. Like Kirk had to throw the football. All right. There were games where I remember early in the season, the narrative was if Kirk has to throw the ball 40 plus times, we can't win. We've got to be able to run the football and protect Kirk Cousins or else. That was the narrative because he was a turnover machine and you didn't want to put the game in his hands because he couldn't handle it. Those were all the narratives early in the season. By season's end, Kirk Cousins throwing the football 45 times was a necessity for us to win. Okay? We had to throw it 45 times in order for us to have a chance to win. So just by virtue of that, he was going to have some gaudy numbers, if he didn't turn it over, which he didn't last year with regularity. This season, though, I could see us scaling that back, especially if we have a consistent running game. So if we can run the football with any kind of consistency, with any kind of effectiveness, that's going to take away from Kirk's attempts. Hence, his completions won't be as high. I think he's a high completion percentage guy either way, whether he throws a bunch of them or he doesn't. I think the completion percentage is still going to be up there, but is he going to exceed 29 touchdown passes? Maybe, maybe not. Is he going to exceed the 4,100 and some change yards he threw for? Maybe, maybe not. I'll tell you this much. If we run the football with the consistency that we want to, he will not exceed the 4,100 and whatever yards he set as a Redskins franchise record. He will not have more than 29 touchdowns passing, which he had last season. So we'll see. I don't think the competition necessarily is the biggest issue. Health is an issue for us because if we stay healthy, I think sky's the limit for this offense. But if we have injuries along that offensive line, injuries to our wide receiving core, if Jordan Reed, if God forbid anything happened to him, you're not going to have the same production out of this offense, and Kirk's numbers may suffer because of that. Not just the competition. Now, I'm not downplaying the competition because we're playing much better defenses. Carolina's defense, legit. Minnesota's defense, legit. We're playing some really tough outfits. Arizona's defense, legit. Grade A, top choice, legit. So we're playing much stiffer competition defensively. We're going to have to play better. We'll see if those defenses, in conjunction with some of the things that I named, are to blame for Kirk's numbers being lower. But Kirk can go out and blaze those teams and continue to ascend, and his numbers may increase. We'll see. I'm confident in Kirk either way. If we protect him, I'm confident in Kirk Cousins, man. I'm confident. You knew that. And I was confident in Kirk when few, if any, were confident in Kirk Cousins. All right, we got 8 minutes left. See if we got any more heat on Twitter. Heard the notification just go off. Sergio asks the following. Do you see Kirk having a good season knowing the schedule? I kind of just answered that. I feel good about Kirk Cousins. If we don't win this season, I don't think it's going to be because of Kirk Cousins. If we don't win this season, it'll be because we didn't raise our level of play to the level of the competition, and we just got beat by better teams, and we're not ready yet. That's what I feel. If we lose, it's because the defense didn't play well. If we lose, it's because the running game wasn't sufficient enough, and everything was put on Kirk, and he wasn't able to lead us. Because you can have your quarterback carry you against the St. Louis Rams, against a bad Eagles team, against the Chicago Bears, against the Buffalo Bills. You can have your defense carry you against those teams. But what happened, or excuse me, Kirk Cousins carry you in those games. What happens when the team you're playing against is good enough to overcome Kirk Cousins being good? Okay? We saw that in the playoffs. And Kirk Cousins really wasn't good in that game, to be honest with you. But we got no help from the defense. There was no help from the running game. Played a better team. It wasn't Kirk Cousins being good. We needed him to be great to win that game. He was good, not great, and we lost. And we needed him to make some throws. We needed him to make better decisions, and he didn't. And so if that happens to us this year, we're not going to be a good team because we're playing much stiffer competition. So can Jordan Reed be a top 2 tight end? And this is coming from Sergio on Twitter. Come on, man. You know the answer to that. Jay Reed is lethal at tight end, straight up. If you're talking all around, he'll never be top 2 in the league because he's not good enough blocking. Can he grow into a better run blocker? Sure. I don't see it happening, though. But he's going to try because that's what Jordan Reed is as a person. He's a guy that's going to give you everything he's got. It just may not be suffice. But as a receiver, as a pass catcher, he's already top 5 in that regard right now. You're not going to find 4 better pass catching tight ends than Jordan Reed in the league right now. So with that being said, I look at Jordan Reed and I say, if he has another season like he did last year, go ahead and put him in the top 2 in the league because the only other guy that's going to surpass him if he's healthy is Gronk. Other than Gronk, I think Jordan Reed is the best pass-catching tight end in the league right now as we speak. But if you're talking all around, there's still some other guys that block and catch the football, and so he may not supersede them quite yet. But Jordan Reed, we know about the talent that exists there, and we're going to have to pay that young man, especially if he goes out and balls again. I'm looking forward to breaking him off if he can go out and have another big season. I would love for them to open up the checkbook, open up the wallet, and give Jay Reed the money that he deserves. So that's it on Twitter. Let's see if we got anything on YouTube. If not, we can go ahead and call it a day. It's been a very productive live feed. I thank all of you guys for joining me. And there is nothing on YouTube. So we're going to wrap it up, man. I thank y'all for joining me on this program. I am a Redskins fan, etched in burgundy and gold. My Redskins spirit will never die. My Redskins spirit will never fold until we meet again. Hail to our beloved Redskins. I'm excited about the draft coming up. I can't wait to see what we do. We're going to talk more about not just the Redskins, but all the teams in the league. But again, if you're watching, you got Redskins questions, send them my way when I do the In the Draft Room live series on Tuesday. And so we got 2 more episodes of that. I'm going to have the draft party. So we'll talk between now and then. We'll see if the Redskins make any more moves in terms of free agency between then and now, and see what rumors come out about the Redskins and will they trade or who they might select. We'll talk about all those things moving forward. But very productive episode. Talked about our beloved Redskins. It's been a blast. I thank each and every single one of you guys for joining me. I know it's Saturday night. You had better things to do, but you sat here and chopped it up with your man, Louie Tee. And because of that, I appreciate you, the viewer. Have a good one. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Enjoy the NBA playoffs. I'll see you on Tuesday. Have a good one.